So, welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. And I have brought today Jayme, who is someone who knows firsthand what it feels like to hit a wall and what it takes to rebuild your life from a place of strength instead of survival. And Jayme is a coach who helps high achievers escape burnout and realign their success with their actual happiness. I hope that I got that right. Did I miss anything?
You crushed it. You crushed it.
Awesome.
I'm sure we'll unpack more as we chit chat. So that was a great opener.
Well,
Glad to be here.
You're, it's super cool to do this episode because I was listening to some of the podcasts that you've been on before, and I recognize how much resistance comes with having to dig into like that origin story kind of thing. So we're not going to do that. So as we go through this podcast, if people want to know more about Jayme, definitely just utilize that SEO, start Googling her name, dig into the other episodes, look into like you have a podcast of your own, right?
Yes. Make time for your mind with Coach Jayme. And in case like this is an audio too, I am the Jayme with no eyes. So if you look for Jayme, that's how you'll find me.
Yeah.
Cyberstalk away. That's why I have my stuff there.
Exactly. And so that's how people will be able to fill in the gaps because we're going to get we're probably going to dive down some rabbit holes. We might have some tough questions that come up, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I wanted to say before we go too far into the episode is your book is live now, is it not?
Yes, it is official. It is official. It actually even launched 2 days early. It was supposed to be today, but it got launched on Sunday. So people are getting them delivered right now as we speak. So super cool thing.
So, what is your book about? Just like a quick 2 minute elevator pitch about the book, why you wrote it, and what it means to you.
Yes. So actually, maybe this can be the replacement for the deep dive in my story. Quotes have always been something that have impacted me dramatically. I have a very diverse resume personally and professionally, many of times of which I didn't want to be here. And I even made attempts to not be here. So the fact that I am even here is incredible. But it was actually, I wrote this book back in 2021. And it's been sitting in a Google Doc until my friend who is a publisher was like, hey, girl, like, I'm going to have you speak and we're going to use a book as PR. I'll help you write one. I was like, I already did. And so she's the one that inspired me to pull it out of the archives. And essentially what the book is that in the darkest times of my life, the only thing that got me through was literally I had Post-it notes all around my house. And I would be like laying on my floor, just bawling my eyes out and falling asleep, just like not wanting to be here. And so it was these random quotes that were just everywhere that quite literally saved my life. And so what I did is I took this book and I narrowed it down to 123 of those quotes that massively impacted my life. But in addition to that, you don't just get the quote, you get a part of my story. You get how I had perceived this particular quote and then how I used it in my life to like move me forward. So I give an opportunity for you to maybe get a different perspective around a quote, or maybe it's a quote you haven't ever heard, but then I always finish with a call to action or something for you to think through that will inspire you to do something with the quote that you just read.
I like that. That's deep because it's
Thank you.
like on the surface, there's things that people can take action with in a very short period of time. But then as they learn more of the context behind it, they can kind of build on it and kind of utilize that compound effect. I think there's a book that you mentioned in a podcast you're on talking about kind of
Yes.
dove in.
By Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect. Great book.
Yeah. It's just like everything about the work that you're doing, I think will resonate with a lot more people than what people may first realize. It's kind of like when you hear a story and at first you're like, that's not for me. And then you get a few chapters in, you're like, whoa, that is for me. And so I think a lot of the questions that we're going to talk about are going to hopefully help a lot of people. So the first question that I have for you is, you talk a lot about burnout and identity loss in high performers. What were some of the warning signs you missed in yourself that you now use to help your clients spot early?
Yes. Great question to kick us off with, because it's funny now in my journey, I kind of can't stand the word burnout, which is funny that I use it, but it is such a a trending word, but as I quite literally hit burnout multiple times in my life. One in particular, when I got put on bed rest for an entire week with a kidney infection because I was running on fumes, maybe sleeping 3 hours a day. I was in a gym 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, wearing like 60,000 different hats, volunteering, working, doing all these things because I thought that if I made money, I would be happy. People would respect me. I would earn credibility and like life would get better and someday feel happy. And that wasn't the case. And fortunately, but unfortunately, I had the opportunity to learn that at a young age. But to answer your question, for me, the way that I avoided it was the same self-talk that gave me that ability to work really hard and to achieve a lot of things. I listened to it so loudly that that's what drove me into the ground because it was this trash talk to myself that like, you're not freaking tired. Just suck it up. Just get it through it. You're fine. Get over it. Move on. It's almost over. You'll breathe when you reach this point. You're going to finally be happy once this happens. It's all going to fall into place. Then you'll have more time. And then I just like let that cycle continue where if I talked myself out of it, I was even to a point that I didn't believe I was sick. I was like, being sick is mental. If I don't tell myself I'm sick, then I'm not sick. And as long as I just keep moving, I won't think about it. And if I can't think about it, then I'll be fine. And then that's what led to a kidney infection was because my body was finally, it was whispering at me to say like, nah, girl, we can't function at this pace. And then it screamed at me and it's like, we will take you down completely where you can't leave bed if you won't listen to us. So it was me using the tool of my mindset, right, to get me to those places. But it was from a very shameful, prideful, and insecure space that forced me into a toxicity level of grind, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense because as I was kind of prepping for this episode, like one of the reasons why it was easy because like when I recorded my last guest episode is probably 2 months ago, and the pace that I
Okay.
would keep like in the past years is probably I've had weeks where I've done like 5 episodes in a week. I've had weeks where I've done two, and over the last few years, I've kind of brought it down to like maybe one episode a week or maybe one episode a month. Half the reason is because I could observe myself gaining experiences that were making the quality of the episodes better. And
Mhm.
my priority was the support that I do for my clients and the other podcasts that I produce and consult for. And that's
Yeah.
how I could kind of move the needle. But as I was kind of understanding more about the work that you do and the places that I find myself in from time to time, I was like, ah, this is a good combination because I right before we recorded, I was getting a quote for painting for my building, and it was from a friend.
Okay.
And my friend asked me, "So, what else do you do besides work?" And I was like, "Ah, I just work." And like, I that's my casual response just about all the time. But admittedly, I am someone who has to think very deeply to discern what is the things that I do that's not work. And there's a lot of things. I'm gonna make a social media post about this later, but as I was thinking about it, I've addressed that some of the things that I do that I enjoy that aren't work are I genuinely love my visits with my family. And that's like my parents, my siblings, my nieces, my sister-in-law,
Yeah.
even cousins, like cousins from local, cousins who live in other places. I have cousins in Australia, Denmark, the States, different
Yeah.
provinces. And then I was like, and I like Lego, and I like baking, and I like long ass walks, and I like going to get ice cream, and I like hanging out with my family members' pets. So I could find some things, but
Yeah.
now I'm going to turn the table over to you. What are the things that you do that are not work?
Yes. Great question. Real quick, what I also want to mention is right before we just jumped on this podcast, I actually was doing a discovery call on a potential client. She's super successful. Her business as a physical therapist is like taking off. She's got a leadership coach. She's got a business coach of like just scaling her business, all these amazing things. And as we were talking, I was like, okay, I was like, so, let's get clear on this and let's start going after those goals. She goes, but what if I don't really know what I want? Because outside of work, I don't know what to do. She goes randomly. She goes, I had a Sunday off a couple of years ago and I didn't have anything to do. And I even felt kind of sick. And so she's like, I was sitting there and I couldn't handle it. Like her body was so used to just being in work mode and overdrive all the time that she didn't know what else to do or what to turn to as something that she enjoyed doing, that she got out her computer and started sending emails for like admin and work stuff, because that's just the habit that she cultivated, or how much of her identity was engulfed in work. So mine, oh, so many things. First of all, I am very, very strong in my faith. And so for me, I don't even go to anything in the world but my Bible when I first wake up. Nobody has access to me. I get my coffee, my dogs lay by me, and I just spend time with the creator of everything, me, the reason why I'm even here. So that's always my major anchor. We've made it more than 5 minutes into this podcast, so I could tell you I do CrossFit, right?
Yeah,
We're going
yeah.
to say how to know a CrossFitter. Don't worry, they'll tell you. So yeah, CrossFit is very much my training style of choice. And so that's something that I thoroughly enjoy doing. People have always asked if I would ever do or like be like a CrossFit coach. And I'm like, no, because then to me it wouldn't be fun, because now it's work. So that's truly my fun, like just competitive edge, get it out. I don't have to think. I do all of that. I am a coffee snob. You will never catch me dead in a Starbucks. And so I just love like the aesthetic of finding like little mom and pop shop, like boutique coffee places, and being able to just sit and read a book. I love dancing. Music is my jam. I love super deep conversations that can just change the world. I love to volunteer. I actually do prison ministry at a women's prison here in Texas, and being able to hang out with them is such a blast. They have so much joy, even though they are in such a dark place. So I have tons of things. I could keep going, but I'll stop for now.
No, that's really good because there's a few things that I can take from that. One of the things is to your point about CrossFit, I do jujitsu. I almost forgot to mention that. I like to mention it to everybody that I talk to within the first 5 minutes.
There we go.
And so
The conversation can officially start now that we got that out of the way.
yes, yes, exactly. The other thing that stood out to me was just kind of when you talked about that call that you had, and the person was always trying to do make work projects, like find things to do amidst doing nothing. The crossroads I've found myself in is the last like 3 weeks. I haven't woken up as early as what I had woken up the prior few months. And I was
Mhm.
like, am I doing something wrong? And I was like looking at all the commitments that I had and the tasks that had to be completed, and they're all done. I was like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm just resting. I guess I could do that. And so it's sort of a concept that's foreign to a lot of people, probably very prevalent in the fitness industry, but then also prevalent to people who support other people. So, like, people who are looking out for family members, people who are looking out for friends, people who are teachers or nurses, just like people who are the helpers of life, where it's like suddenly there's nothing on their calendar, nobody needs them, and it feels super weird to just like sit down in a chair and read a book or go and build a puzzle, but it's
Mhm.
super necessary.
Thousand
um
percent.
what have been the biggest moments where you've kind of realized that for yourself in the time that you've been like specialized in helping the high performers, like later on in the journey when you were more self-aware but you still had to catch yourself from working too much as a coach?
So for me, I'm really, really big on being a product of my own product. And by no means I'm not perfect. I have a very strict like habit that on a weekly basis and a monthly basis, I do what I call self audits, where I'm like, what worked, what didn't work, what's my focus for the upcoming week. So I'm pretty good at like balancing my checkbook. For those of you that know what checkbooks are, I don't know how young of an audience you have. They're probably like, what? But like, so no, I'm pretty good at like navigating as far as all of that goes. But I think as a business owner who also literally like my livelihood relies on selling my services to help people in this, that if there are moments where there's like lulls, or if I have like a lot of clientele that like phase out at the same time, because I only do one-on-one work because it's very, very niche, and I give all of my time and energy to that outside of like my speaking and workshops and stuff. But I think that the biggest thing is I'm a recovering control freak, because I thrive in chaos. And if I go, 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 like I do better if I'm doing a lot of things, because I can function that way better than if I'm calm, because I'm like, something bad's gonna happen. Right. Like that's what a lot of people feel if they actually get experience of like calm. probably any parent on here can agree with that. They're like, if there's actually quietness in the house, they're like, the kids are doing something that's probably going to be very destructive because we can't hear them, right? So it's almost this like sensitivity to silence. And so in those moments, I think that when I, even being further along in my journey and being more aware of it, the thing that I always have to dial back in on is if there's like a theme of things going not in the direction that I would prefer, I have to catch myself to not like go in overdrive to try to make up for it, because then it's like this extra layer of forcing myself to hustle to catch back up. When in reality, it's like, no, 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 like this is part of the journey. Like there's going to be like highs and lows with it. Like keep doing what you're doing and doing it well. Because the second that I start freaking out, now I'm functioning from a higher stress level. But now I'm like trying to do all of these unnecessary things that I wouldn't have done if I was in a confident, smooth state of where my business was. And so I think that's the moment that I have to like dial it back in to be like, hey, I get it. Like maybe you do have to amp up a little bit of like the efforts of what you're doing in this season, but like, no, no, no. Like you've been consistently planting seeds. Like you just also have to trust the journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I thought about a lot of people who, because like within my work, I end up on a lot of calls with other coaches, and they'll
Hmm.
talk about their struggles with the ups and downs of being self-employed, of being a business owner, of trying to get clients. And it's like sometimes when you're trying too hard towards a certain goal, it almost makes it more difficult. And so,
Absolutely.
like, more often than not, I'll have to like help them zoom out to kind of see the bigger picture. It's like 10
Yeah.
years ago, you probably met this person working retail or volunteering, and chances are they don't know what you're doing now. And there's just opportunities. It's not like that stereotypical somebody selling MLM and they're reaching out and it's like, do you want to hop on a call and learn about my like fruit punch or something? It's more so like when you just kind of like naturally reconnect. Like one of my best examples is there's been times when I could take on clients, but nobody was inquiring. And then one time, just out of the blue, somebody that I had worked with at a sporting goods place like 15 years ago, his wife needed a
Yeah.
trainer. And because he was connected to me on Instagram, then I was the trainer that he knew. And that's why he reached out. And it was just like, I didn't even, it was like a cold intro, an exciting cold intro, but a cold intro
Mhm.
nonetheless. And the reason I thought about that was because you kind of talked about the whole like planting seeds and stuff.
Mhm.
And a lot of this can take shape for people at any level of their journey, whether they're like starting a pursuit or in the middle stages of it or the advanced stages of it. There's so many things that we've already done that we need to give ourselves credit for in order to see our potential of who we could be in the future.
Yeah.
Um, but then for some people, there might come another issue where it's like, okay, I'm making momentum, but what is this for? What is this all? What does this mean? Kind of that existential crisis that some people have.
Yeah.
So when you encounter people kind of facing that situation where they're like, should I just like move to the beach or like what am I doing all this for? Like maybe they're super super successful, they have nothing to stress about, nothing to worry about, but then they're like, what does this all mean? Like how do you navigate those kinds of situations with the people that you work with and talk to?
Beautiful question. I had, it broke my heart, but it was probably one of the, I struggle to say cool experience because again, it broke my heart, but it was a very eye-opening experience. Let's word it that way. About 8 months or so ago, maybe there was a gentleman that reached out to me, 77 years old. The dude married, the entire time, never divorced anything, 5 kids, all of them successful, debt free, living on their own, having their families. He'd owned multiple homes. He had been like top 4% in the auto industry, like his whole career. He managed over 600 employees, like all the things, and was retired, had been retired for like 7 years or so. And then, so we're sitting there and I was like, okay, sir, why are we here? And all of a sudden he stopped for a second and he's like, well, my wife thinks I'm a lot. I think I'm a lot. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and I don't really know why I'm here. Like, I just don't feel like I really serve a purpose. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, so would you say that it's because maybe like you're reaching the end of the honeymoon phase of retirement? And so you have all this time on your hands that you just don't know what to do with it. And like you feel useless in that way. Cause to me, that makes sense. Right. And he sat for a second and he's like, that would be the easy answer. He goes, however, I have felt this way my whole life. He's like, I just happen to be really good at making money. And it was a better alternative than going potentially to jail because of partying all the time. Because that was the route I was initially having or heading down until somebody got me into car sales. And it broke my heart, like I said, but it was the coolest thing to hear because what you just described, we live in this world that's constantly telling us all the reasons we're not happy and is constantly selling us on things that will bring us happiness, worldly things, money, power, fame, to be able to spend your life just sitting on a beach and doing all that. And although that's great, so many people are living for, I'll be happy when, I'll be able to breathe when, life will finally be good. And then it's smooth sailing once XYZ happens. And that's never the case. But people keep living that way. So they keep chasing these highs, like shooting for the end result, only for it to only last temporarily. And then they're trying to chase the next thing. And then they missed it all. And so kind of to combine, if you're this question with what we were just talking about, that is something that I have been very blessed to experience within this journey of like my own burnout and what it like with building my own business and helping my clients through this is it's like me teaching them how to slow down in order to speed up. Like, are you really like embracing like how good this moment feels? Like on a really crappy day when maybe it didn't go according to plan or the people that you thought were going to move forward and your program didn't. It's like, okay, am I going to let fear cause me to freak out and then I'm just overly stressed? Or am I going to be like, hey, listen, like I have this hour open up on my schedule. Like maybe I'll reach out to a loved one and just see how they're doing. Right. Again, there's got to be some self audits in here because if you catch yourself just coasting all the time, like then you're creating a different habit. But I think it's just if you are somebody who is naturally a go getter, anyways, it's like, I have this time. What is it that I want to do with it? Like, if I want to go make more money, for what? There
Mhm.
was a statistic that was given out, oh, like a year ago, because they were talking about like with how crazy like cost of living and like the just like housing prices have went up. And they said that anybody who made like their household, I believe it was like 85,000 to like 125,000 a year, like obviously depending how many people were within that household, right? But like if you had around that income for your house to like the bridge of like 250,000 or like let's just even like split the difference. Let's say 100 grand because I'm terrible statistics, but we're just roll with me. But whatever that number was compared to anything less, people anything less than that were really, really struggling. We're really, really not like miserable, just we're not happy with life, right? They're hustling to just be able to have like their basic needs essentially met. But this certain window where there was just enough of a cushion that you were able to afford and enjoy a little bit more was drastically higher than the people making less. But from like, I believe it was like 250,000 or maybe it was like 300,000 and up, there was barely a difference in happiness. So somebody who can freaking buy a jet isn't any happier than somebody who's maybe making 250,000 a year.
Mhm.
Like at some point, these temporary material things are only going to be shiny for so long, right? Like, have you ever read the book? I forget his name, but it's the subtle art of not giving a
Oh, yeah,
FUCK.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. He talks about that. Like these people are like balling out their money on like drugs and women and all this stuff. And at some point, like it doesn't get fun anymore. You've experienced all that. You've traveled all to these places. Celine Dion even said it. Like the woman is a freaking icon. And they asked where her favorite place was she ever traveled. She goes, I have literally been everywhere. She goes, but I haven't seen it
Yeah.
because it was just another thing that I was doing. So it's like the memory was missed. And I think that that's why so many people may even reach that point. Like, cool, you make all of this money, but you're still not happy. And then that's where I get to come in and talk with them, where it's like, okay, well, how do we navigate this? Why is that? Like, how are you functioning and what expectations do you have? And is that also why maybe there's a disconnect in why your expectations aren't being met? Because you're chasing a high that doesn't necessarily exist or isn't sustainable.
Absolutely.
That was a very long-winded way. And we hit a couple bumps along the road. So thank you for bearing with me.
No worries, because like what you are expanding on speaks to a lot of like how I make my decisions. So I was lucky enough to kind of like understand the importance of having like these anchors in life. And for me, a lot of my anchors are like family and close friends. I'm very, very close with my family. Like every week I see either like my parents or one of my siblings, and I am a passionate ringette watching uncle. Like I've shown up to so many ringette games, and sometimes I'm like, am I overdoing this? I'm like, nah, like this is part of me. Like this is the point. This is the whole purpose. And sometimes even just with my visits and like communication with my parents and my siblings, I'm like, is this overkill? And I'm like, no. And the thing that makes it easier for me to do this is amidst all the connections I've made over the years, I have a few mentors that have achieved massive, massive wealth. And the funny thing is that they aren't braggadocious about it. So a lot of people kind of like profile them as like, ah, no, they're just faking it or something like that. But the thing is that they're very forthcoming with me in the fact that the things that bring them joy are like hanging out over coffee and having some like fancy bread and having
Yeah.
conversation and going on long walks. Like people who have achieved business success, nothing really changes other than that feeling of security, and making sure that everybody in your circle is going to be okay. There's a bit of a shift when somebody's able to change the lives of other people. Like if you have a business that's able to support the careers of several other people, but that what it takes to achieve that is deceptively not that much. And then it's like when
Mhm.
people start a business, like let's use Amazon for example. Like then they're creating wealth to a degree that goes far and beyond like any amount of money that they would ever need in their lifetime, let alone everybody that is in their phone contacts would ever need in their
Mhm.
lifetime. And it becomes kind of like null and void. And then those people are having maybe even bigger battles than that person in the 120K and below demographic, where maybe like they're making enough, but like if they had to replace their hot water tank, it would ruin their month kind of thing. So it's just, I like that we dove down that rabbit hole because it opens up the floor for people to understand that like you can be ambitious and you can be diversely skilled and diversely experienced, but at the end of the day, the things that matter is like for you, you talk about your faith. For me, I like to be connected with nature. I mean, I grew up
Yeah.
going to church, but I find that I also like to learn about other people and like what other
Yeah.
people are into. Like my one of my professors at jujitsu is Muslim, and a lot of my friends are Muslim. So I like to have this kind of crossroads where I can connect with just about
Yeah.
everybody. Um, so it's crazy how people lose sight of what the point of all this life stuff is. And I have another question for you. Um, what's something you thought would fix you that actually didn't?
Oh my gosh, that was like my entire life until, oh my gosh, like let's even just say all through my 20s, probably even. I thought that having money was going to fix my problem. I thought that being in a relationship, whether it was a healthy one or not, was going to make me happy and give me all the things that I wanted. I thought being married with kids and having a 401k established at 30 would be the dream, right? That America sells you on. I'm 34 years old, never been married, don't have any kids, and I'm the happiest that I've ever been. So many things. I thought that like so much of my self-worth and happiness was tied to what other people thought of me because I saw their highlight reels and they had it and I wanted it too. One of my favorite examples, and this is kind of like left field, but it pertains to this still, I promise. Now that we are in this self-care era, I hate when people do this. It's got good intentions, but people take something and they go way too far. And everyone's like, no, like you need to be selfish, you need self-care, you need to love you and pamper you. And yes, I agree to an extent. But true to me, the true self-care is like digging in deep to what truly matters, the basics of this. One little other side note, and then I promise I'll plug back in. COVID, how quickly we forgot about that. Money did not matter. When you were literally losing loved ones, when you couldn't even leave your house to go see those that you loved and care about, when like even being able to get your basic groceries was not an option because the stores and the shelves were like off of it. Now all of a sudden it didn't matter about growing and scaling a business because you would give all of that up in a freaking heartbeat if it meant that that person could still be here with you, whoever that person is or those people are, right? Like how quickly we forget that because of the temptations of the world is selling us again on this sexiness, right? Money, power, fame. What we really aim to achieve is love, connection, and serving, right? It feels good to do all those things. To me, that is the definition of success. So back to what I was saying. Self-care. I remember, like, again, social media, like, will show, like, especially as a female, it's like, oh, go to a spa day or like get candles out and get a hot bubble bath and have a glass of wine. And it's just so relaxing. And like, all your problems are just going to melt away while you experience this relaxing bath, this bubble bath, right? Okay. I tried this finally. I'm like, all right, this is what people do. And it looks like this awesome experience. Let me tell you, for all of you out there that do this, I'm sorry if I buzzkill this for you, but this was my experience. First of all, it's actually really gross to just lay there in hot water as your dead skin cells are just kind of falling off. So now the water's dirty because you were dirty and you're like sitting in it. And even if you showered first, I just still feel like that's weird. You're like sweating while you're in the water technically. So it's just gross. The bubbles don't last that long. You would think that when you go in this hot water and then it's just this big bubble experience, they pop like really fast. So then the bubbles aren't there. And then when you're awkwardly laying in the bathtub, like you can't properly drink your wine because then it's going to be like all over your face, or you have to like move in this weird direction. And then like half your body's in the cold and then it's back in the hot water. It's not a fun experience. But everybody's like, oh, self-care. Totally super random, but it pops into my brain. So we're going with it. But like, again, I think my point in all of this is that there's so many things that the world will tell us is going to bring us this love, joy, and happiness. And a lot of times it just isn't so. So those were some more like deeper examples. And then there was my surface level one. I
I
tried self-care in the hot bubble bath and it was dumb.
I like that you like woke up and chose violence against bubble baths of all thing. Like we're ending bubble baths. You know,
But I'm telling you, it looks way cooler when you see it in the movies of how people are relaxing than what it actually is when you do it on your own.
everything has like the context that goes with it, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people are missing is the context that goes
Yeah.
with it. We see something on social media and it's like monkey see, monkey do, and I'm like, if that thing doesn't mean something to you, don't do it. And this
Yeah.
comes up a lot, like the number of people who talk to me about podcasts, and this isn't to discourage anybody. If anybody wants to talk podcasts, I'm all about it. But they'll talk about how they want to start a podcast, and then I'll be like, why? And they'll be like, oh, well, like Chris Williamson has a podcast, or insert anybody else's name who has a podcast. And it's like, and they make money. And I'm like, they're disconnected. That person has like a body of work detached from the podcast that allows that podcast to be successful. I'm like, look at the people whose podcasts you've heard of, and then look at their life before they started their podcast, or look at the thousands of episodes that they've done and the amount of like compounding experience they would have had from that. And then that helps them to conceptualize like why that podcast has created that outcome that it has. And the other thing is, as someone who's seen a lot of like data and analytics, I'm like, Not everything you see on the internet is real. Some people are forthcoming with their podcast data, and some people will deceive you because it makes them look cool and they don't think anybody will be smart enough to know the difference. So these are the things where it's like it's super, super important for something to have some kind of like meaning to you for you to do it. And now I agree with you on the bubble bath, but I'm going to defend the bubble bath just a little bit for anybody who might have been like,
Guys, we hit a sore spot with Chris.
so
Don't come at him with bubble
the
baths.
thing is, like, I completely agree, and I've had the same reflections. I've had them mostly actually with float tanks. I used to
Yeah.
love
Oh, I hate those.
I used to love them because when I was like experiencing like burnout like symptoms, or I was on the cusp of something changing in my life where I knew I would have to work more, I'd have to be more brave, or I'd have to have more guts, then that kind of helped to silence the noise in my head and
Oh,
it
yeah.
helped me process things. But then the
Oh,
last
yeah.
time I went to a float tank, based on the context in my life, I was far more equipped to kind of like ground myself and have a clear head. So I noticed that I was in like recycled water that was like kind of smelled funny. And
And if you accidentally rub your eyes, you get the salt in your eyes, and then your eyes are burning, and then it's not fun to be in. That's what happened to me.
oh yeah, like I've done it all. Like I've had instances where I didn't realize that I had like a cut somewhere and then I was oh that hurts, that
Yeah.
hurts. And like I have done a float tank during the week of jujitsu and automatically you're gonna have battle scars everywhere. Like, I think I have a battle scar on my head right now.
Mm.
But contextually, in that season of life, sometimes these things have made sense. Like when I
Yeah.
was quitting my full-time job to go into fitness, it was a big leap and I was taking a lot of financial risk. And the float tank
Mhm.
helped me then because it helped kind of like, it helped me to kind of see just take one step in front of the other, line
Absolutely.
up one thing at a time, and things will work out. You don't have to stress about becoming an overnight success. You just have to figure out your first step, your first connection, your first rep, do it one day at a time. And so that helped me do something gutsy that most people will never do in their life. And like,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, they stick to that whatever career they're in, and they might not be
Mhm.
fully fulfilled, and they might try to kind of like numb the outcomes of that because they're not fully happy. They don't feel that sense of purpose. And if a
Yeah.
float tank got me into having a sense of purpose, great. And then
1000%.
for bubble baths, we're getting into the bubble
Mhm.
baths. I tried that self-care thing too. And I was like, yeah, this'll do it. And it didn't. But the nice thing was contextually, what I did find was sometimes I needed to change my environment in order to force me to not work. And so
Yeah.
if I wasn't in the bubble bath with like the Epsom salt and the lavender scented bubbles just chilling, then
Yeah.
I would be at a computer or on my phone. But I kind of had,
1000%.
I set boundaries where I was like, okay, I'm not going to take my phone into the bubble bath. It's just going to be me in the bubble bath. And
Yeah.
then as a result of setting the environment with just like a little bit more like conducive to sleeping stuff like lavender and Epsom salt and stuff, then I actually was able to transition into just going to bed instead of working until 2 in the morning trying to finish up projects that I told people I was going to do. I was able
Yeah.
to transition into just getting an actual proper night's sleep. And when I was able to experience that in a few instances, then I could realize the value of it. And then I could transpose that routine to something that was a little less of like basking in my own dead skin water. And perhaps it was my evening walks. I do evening walks pretty frequently. I call them walkie poos. And a while back, I had to give a distinction. There's walkie poos, and then there's walkie poos. They're two different things. One is you
Mhm.
dump when you're on the walk or you're with the dog and the dog takes a dump. And the other thing is it's a walkie poo. It's just like a little walkie
Yeah.
poo. I had ways that I utilized to kind of keep myself on track, but then sometimes I
Definitely.
lose track of my ways that keep me on track. I'll get too caught up in the moment. Maybe somebody I'm working with is getting lots of momentum, and I'm like, let's speed this up. Let's get this going. Whether it's a client that just excelling on all their lifts, or
Yeah.
maybe it's somebody's podcast and they're getting lots of listens, or maybe it's a video edit that I did that got like hundreds of thousands of views. Like there's one that I did that went viral, and I was overtaken by having my Instagram get like 200 likes a day. I've never had that happen, but I did one video and it happened, and
Yeah.
it's crazy how these projects can consume you. And so some of
Yeah.
the things that I've had to do is like even with Instagram, I have it so that most things on my phone will notify me except for one of my email addresses and my Instagram. Because one of
Yeah.
my email addresses, I get emails that stress me out. And so if I turn off the notifications, I look at it when I'm ready. And my Instagram, it's a lot of just noise. Like I have really meaningful chats in the DMs with people, but aside from that, there's a lot of extra fluff. There's a lot of comparison. There's a lot of competition. There's a
Yeah.
lot of deception. And the algorithm is it's a business. So they're not going to just let you just stop scrolling because that's not a good business
Yeah.
model. So
Yeah.
a lot of things that we can kind of impact from that. But my next question for you is, hmm, what's the most surprising belief you've noticed high achievers secretly struggle with?
Ooh, good question. Before we go to that, I'm going to put a pin in it because I have 3 takeaways from that last little snippet we just did.
Yeah.
Okay. One, regarding about like, seeing other people's highlight reels and not understanding the sacrifices that they put into that. But I think also too is that like, would you actually want to trade lives with them? Like, yes, you are believing that if I have all this money, then I will be able to do whatever that I want. But if you actually went and looked at the lifestyle that they were living and how they were spending their time on a regular basis to obtain that, not even the beginning phases, how they are currently living in that, is that the life that would make you happy? So I think I love that you brought that up. But the other part that came to my mind is that for everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so I think if we could take a takeaway, I'm big on like finding like call to actions or like just being able like to use nuggets from whatever we're talking through. And so for me, it's like maybe before making a decision, not knocking bubble baths. I was clearly guilty, but like if that's something that does feel good for you, like yes, like obviously do it. I'm not like saying don't ever have a bubble bath, but it's like recognize like, hey, is this something that I'm willing to say yes to, knowing I'm saying no to something else? Like that's how you're going to find where your priorities lie and what your values are. I did a post on this a while back where I was like, I'm like, I don't need you to tell me your values. Show me your calendar because you can tell me you value it, but if you don't have time on your calendar for that thing you value, no, you don't,
Mm-hmm.
because your calendar shows me what's most important to you, right? Where you choose to be spending that time. And so I think that if you are in a season where you want to grind and you want to grow and you want to make all this money, and that's something because you want to go impact the world or you want to be able to pay off tons of debt so you can purchase a new home, all those things, do it. But know that if I'm going to go into this hustle mode and I'm going to say yes to this, that means I'm saying no to being able to go to my nephew's games. That means that I'm saying no to being able to hang out and connect with genuine friendships around me, potentially. That means, hey, my overall fitness may take a sacrifice because I can't invest as many hours in the gym to hit the specific fitness goals I have in place at this time, right? Like I think that's how I want to sum that up. For every yes you say, you're saying no to something else, and just make sure you're happy with what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. That's what I would say there. My third takeaway that I want to say, I think you should totally call this podcast Basking in Dead Skin Cells, and that would probably get tons of views. Okay. So now, question again, what is a common belief that many of my high achievers have?
Mm-hmm.
One of them, because you kind of also alluded to this too when you were talking about like Amazon, a lot of the people that I work with, because they make all of that money, they are very, very lonely because they feel everybody just wants something from them. So they worked really hard to be successful, but everybody doesn't actually care about them as a person. They only care about what that person can do for them. So they don't trust very often because somebody is always trying to get money or trying to get attached to them to be in the spotlight or whatever it is. Somebody is always wanting something from them. They don't actually genuinely want to be around them. That is probably one of the biggest ones. And then the other one is that like, I didn't do all that I could in this, and this is why I need more. I can do more and this wasn't enough, and that's why I need to go get more.
That's deep. On that first one, what? helps people make a shift and overcome that feeling of loneliness or isolation?
So for me, one, it's the willingness to want to be able to sit in that conversation. And a lot of times, what I will walk them through is like, okay, well, one, how did we get here? What is the belief system and what all proof do we have of people doing that? But what are some scenarios that we can think of where people haven't done that and people haven't felt that way? But then the other thing that I like to do is I like to flip it, be like, how much time have you really invested with other people for them to know you well enough and have a strong enough a relationship to think that they're worthy enough of your time to actually be able to just get an hour of your time without having to like have a benefit from them, like of just genuinely being able to enjoy your company. Do you actually enjoy your own company? Probably not, which is why you always just work and you keep making all this money and you don't allow yourself to be around people. And you have this, in many ways, a good wall built up because of probably people that got burned. Like there was this one guy who literally millions of dollars and he removed himself from the board and then they all kind of like schemed against him and he like got kicked out of his own company and couldn't make any say. And he's like, I literally built this up and I thought you guys were my friends and you totally screwed me. Yeah, I would be ticked. I would be ticked, right? People that you loved and trusted and were doing life with. And I'm not going to say that like I know that there's a better answer to how that would have went down. He's not a client of mine, but it was like some questions that would have come to my mind too is like, okay, well, that sucks. You got to this amount of money, so you've had to be really resilient. So I know you're going to know how to bounce back from this, but like moving forward, like what are maybe some ways that you can make sure that you're pouring into specific relationships where you can like feel that you have proper like trust and support with them? How much time are you spending with them? How many times are you giving an opportunity to get to know them outside of a business transaction
Mm,
or talking to them about something that doesn't have to do with that because that's all you have time to? Oh, hey, how's the day going? Okay, cool. Oh, yeah, how the kids? Oh, yeah, great. No, that they're like 16 now. Okay, cool. All right. Well, hey, by the way, since we're here, just want to take like 10 minutes to talk about this. Okay, cool. Hey, I'll see you in 2 weeks. That's not a relationship.
no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally, it resonates because that's something that I think a lot of people who find this episode will feel seen and hearing, but it's also something that's kind of built some of the framework of some of the things I do and why I do them. Because I've experienced it's very easy to isolate yourself when you're pursuing goals. And then when I come across resistance where it's like, okay, well, how do I make connections? Like, how do I make connections where somebody's not wanting something from me? Because it's like, as you talked about that, I would say I don't feel to an extreme degree that people want things from me, but I do realize that a lot of my interactions result in me doing something for somebody, like we'll connect, and then all of a sudden I'm doing something for them. And the way that I often overcome this is just blocking out time for literal just walk and talks and opening that up to a very diverse assortment of people. Like I have some qualifiers. Like I'm not just walking and talking with just anybody, but like I'll have friends that I just met. I'll go for a walk and talk with a friend that I've known for like a decade. And I will go to my way to set these things up, and I set them up with people I'm related to too, people I'm not related to, because it's just that's what I need to do in order to kind of like nurture those relationships to make it so that I'm personally not closed off. But it requires your time, so you do have to make it a priority. And like so in my calendar, because if I don't put it in there like as an event, somebody else books up that time. Like I'm synced up with so many different like booking platforms that like on any given moment I could have a Zoom call booked in my calendar as soon as tomorrow. And
Yeah.
so like my day changes pretty fast. And
Yeah.
so like the time that I spend with like my parents or my siblings in the calendar, it's scheduled. It's like there's ringette games here. I put that in the calendar. It's like I'm gonna move a couch and that's in the calendar. And so that makes sure that happens. But then it's also these walk and talks or even just like things that require my time. Like I went off-roading with some friends that I connected with. And so I blocked out, I'm going off-roading during this time. And by doing
Yeah.
that and reflecting on each year that passes and making sure that I had some of these things sprinkled into the year, that's where I, for myself personally, am able to instill connections that if it's like I need someone to just talk to about non-work life things, then I should almost always have somebody that understands that side of me and is open to having that conversation, that visit. And it's something that I am extremely aware that a lot of people don't do. Like a lot of people will overlook it, and then they come to a point in their life where they're like, "Oh, this is really tough. I don't have anybody to talk to." Fortunately, I'm that guy for a lot of people. Like the number of people that come to me when they're like at their darkest, lowest point is pretty crazy, which is why I have to do jujitsu and eat my vegetables and get some sleep so I can be strong too. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a skill, it's a routine that a lot of people would benefit from refining. They don't have to be some personal development fitnessy trainer guy trying to make a living off of helping people. You could be in finance or accounting, or you could be a boiler maker, and you could be setting aside time for walk and talk with friends or coffee with friends. Just make sure you're not going to Starbucks because that stuff tastes like garbage. Um, but all that to,
Dead skin cells and Starbucks. There we go. There's a podcast
I
name.
was glad
Basking in dead skin cells with
I was
Starbucks.
glad when you kind of slam them because one of my favorite things, if I'm meeting up with people, because I'm based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, I will identify places that are owned by people local. And every so often I'll support a franchise because franchises can be owned locally too. But my favorite is when it's especially cool when I've interviewed like the founder of the business and it's their business and it's like this is
Yeah.
as like grassroots as it gets. Those are special. But then even if I don't know the owner, but I know the business enough that I know that the owner conceptualized the whole thing, they decided what artwork went on the wall. If it's coffee, if they chose the coffee beans, they roasted the coffee beans, or if I've heard their story in any way, that's like my favorite kind of business to go to, whether it's like whether I'm meeting somebody for a date or having like a just a good visit with somebody because there's
Yeah.
just more substance to it. There's more meaning to it. And it feels like I'm doing something then rather than just going to every, like, when you get something that's franchised out to the scale where there's like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands locations, like internationally, it loses its magic. And all of a sudden, like I went to McDonald's in Denmark last year and it wasn't much different than McDonald's in Canada or McDonald's in the
Yeah.
US. Like some of the menu items are different as they do with all these international locations, but like the you go in there, the door looks the same, the employees look the same, the little tablet where you order looks the same, the receipt looks the same, the food looks the same. Like
Yeah.
there's so it's just makes life lose its whole purpose, which I think is why so many people feel lost and burnt out because they're doing things that don't have purpose in their micro actions. And they think that those don't count because, oh, that's just getting coffee. And it's like, well, if you want your life to feel a bit more abundant, change where you go for coffee. Like, change it on a weekly basis. I have this note in my phone that has like 60 different coffee places in Edmonton that aren't chains that I could go to where the owner is local, if not in Edmonton, at least Canadian. And of course, like when I go to other places, like if I travel and I'm going to another country, I want to have the stuff that is grassroots to that place. So
Yeah.
it's not that I'm just like Canada or nothing. I'm like, no, I like everything. I like to understand the origins of people in other countries. I like to understand how people kind of got to where they are now in other industries, et cetera, et cetera. But now I'm going on a long tangent. So I'm going to give you another question, and it is
Okay.
what would you say to someone listening who feels like if they slow down, they'll lose everything?
I would say you have to slow down to speed up. Typically, we live in a world with the blessing of technology that we can become efficient in everything, but it does tie into how you just looped up that last part is life is meant to be experienced, and we are functioning on autopilot where everything is maintaining surface level. If you want to, like, if genuinely a Starbucks is your jam, like, be intentional about the conversation that you get to have while you're sitting in there. Like, really truly sit with like what you love about the flavor or the aesthetic of the environment that you're in. And so many people, again, are chasing after, I have to go fast, I have to achieve XYZ because otherwise I'm going to fail, or otherwise I'm not going to be happy, or whatever it may be, right? Fill in the blank. And so when you're living out of, oh, okay, I got a good quote for this. I had heard one time, they're like, if you catch yourself feeling depressed, that's a sign you're living in the past. If you catch yourself feeling anxious, that's a sign you're living in the future. And if you catch yourself experiencing peace, that's an indicator that you are present. And so many people are afraid to slow down because of fear of the future in whatever way that may be, or it's sitting down and reminiscing of the shame, the guilt, the regrets of something that happened before. But if you genuinely learn to enjoy the world around you as it is happening, that's when life gets good. So if you're struggling with that, of course, it's going to be hard because you're not used to doing it, right? Somebody who wants to have straight teeth, right? You have to go through the pain and the awkwardness of braces to be able to get used to it and then appreciate the smile that came afterwards, right? So your life is kind of the same way. You have to practice and work through the awkwardness of learning how to sit in stillness and slow down. But once you practice it that enough and it doesn't become as hard or awkward, that's where, in my opinion, freedom lies.
I love that. And you outlined some things I'm going to speak to as briefly as I can to not take up too much of your time. But when you talked about how if you're thinking in the past, then you're feeling depressed, and if you're thinking in the future, then you're feeling anxious, there's a lot of things that I've had to realize about myself that have helped me to rein myself in. So, like, I'm a very reflective, introspective person. I like to go back in
Mhm.
time and kind of think about past connections, past experiences. And I feel like that is what makes me who I am. But what I've learned
Yeah.
is that it has been more of an obstacle than anything because, like, who I am is who I am right now, and it doesn't change. Like, I can't change the past. So thinking about the past doesn't enhance me as the person I am now. Like, I need to own
Yeah.
like what I have become and leave it at that. And then think about, like, if I am talking to somebody, I need to think about, like, how can I enjoy this moment more? And I'll defend Starbucks briefly because I feel like I need to defend everything that I attack.
Hey,
So
I was gonna say I still gave some good nuggets
you totally
after.
did. And so I'm
The
gonna add
background.
on to it because many times in my life, whether I was working a retail job in a mall or just I had like this carved out routine, same place, same day, same person, all this stuff,
Mhm.
I have befriended many store employees at many different
Yeah.
places. And I have realized how impactful those little interactions can be. And so what I would
Mm.
say is if someone listening just absolutely loves Starbucks, then make sure you're enjoying those moments. Like, if you're seeing, even if it's a different barista every single time, when you're seeing them, making sure that you're actually like having a connection, not just like avoiding eye contact, brushing them off as if they're nothing, but like those little moments where it's like, hey, how are you doing today? Ask them how they're doing, but actually mean it, or ask them in a different way that throws them off their script. And it doesn't have to be a long, lengthy visit, but just something that helps them kind of feel like a person too. Because it's kind of similar to how when we give things or we help other people with things, we feel better. And so when we have more connection points with people, even if they're absolute strangers, it enriches our life. So if Starbucks is the domain
Mhm.
that you're in, and it's the most convenient. Sometimes they just locate those things where two people can meet up and just life is good.
Exactly.
So that may be the case, but then just make sure that you're making it intentional. And then as we think
Exactly.
towards the future, And those situations that give people a lot of anxiety, like this is going to be something that's going to resonate with a few people. I'm not even going to like label which people it's going to resonate with, because I think a lot of people worry about the future, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people kind of get hung
Absolutely.
up with like, oh, I'm not far along enough at this critical moment to get to that moment, when everything, like, so many times people's wins take them farther than what they calculated, and then it makes up for the fact that it might not have happened as soon as they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give a shout out to Beverly, who I think you'll be connecting with tomorrow or something like that. Um,
Yes, I'm going to be on her podcast tomorrow, right?
yeah. And so one of her things that she says, and I work for her essentially as like a coach on her team, and also I help with her podcast, but she always says it'll take what it takes until it takes. And I've heard that like
Mm-hmm.
thousands of times, and I may have like paraphrased it poorly, but the more you work towards something while trying to balance your family, the more
Mm-hmm.
you realize how much that takes precedent. Because something that I've always admired about her is when I witness how she builds her business, like she's very focused, very dialed in, but when her family needs her, she takes care of them. And that's like an important thing for me. That's what I look for in people. And then for myself, there's lots of things that I thought that I would have accomplished by now, like professionally within the ecosystem of what I do for work, and I haven't. And I'm okay with that, because the trade-off was that I don't like it's I may have missed like 2 weekends in the last like 3 to 4 years where I didn't see a family member. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like even amidst COVID, like I hated COVID because like I'm a bachelor, I live by myself. It impacted my in-person training. But
Yeah.
even amidst that, I had a friend that I was playing Scrabble with, like with the phone game,
Yeah.
and I did more podcasts with like people that I just enjoyed talking to, so I just bring them back on the show over and over and over again. So even though things weren't going according to plan, I could be intentional, and while being intentional about these connections may have slowed me down, that's the whole point. Like it's like if we're not putting these things into our life, there's nothing else in life. Like to get
Yeah.
money faster, that's not it. That's not the secret. To miss out on these connections with like the Starbucks barista, that's not it. That's not the secret. Like nobody
Yeah.
cares if there's like a 3 minute fluctuation into when you get to that destination, as long as you're not notoriously late. Um, it's just all these things add up, and what people think is important based on their perception of others isn't always what is important. It's usually the person that nobody's ever heard of talking about the things that are the most impactful. Like this
Okay.
podcast, I've always kind of talked about this, and it's like I haven't broke through into mainstream, but I'm just sticking to my messaging. I'm like, when somebody dives down the rabbit hole of all these episodes, they're gonna be like, oh, he's consistent and he's always
Mm-hmm.
promoted family, friends, fitness,
Yeah.
faith, values, anything like that.
Yeah.
That said, do you have any closing wisdom for our audience today?
I feel like there's so many. You know, another quote. I used to do hair for a living. And so I had weekly regulars where it was like my old ladies every Friday and Saturday, I would do their shampoo set. So that was just my whole day, me and the old ladies. And there was a lot of them. She was my favorite first thing in the morning every Saturday. And I remember I was going through something really, really tough and I was telling her all about it. And she goes, sweetie, I want to tell you the best advice I've ever been given. She goes, never take life too seriously because none of us make it out alive. And so I think in my overall piece of wisdom that I would like to leave you guys with is that what came to my mind is I've been on a lot of podcasts and it seems like a very common question to ask of like, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would it be? Or if you could go back and change anything, what it would be? And the way that I always answer that is I don't have any regrets because I'm so grateful for the person that I am because of what I experienced. So if I had to, I wouldn't say anything to younger Jayme because she was a freaking mess and she wouldn't have listened anyway. So there's that. Might as well save my energy. But if there would be anything I would say to her is be like, trust the process. This is all going to make sense later. So no matter what season of life you're sitting in, if you're like in like feeling insanely defeated, if you're feeling very, very afraid, if like you're stuck between a crossroad of what to do, if life is good, it doesn't matter where you are in it. Like just trust the journey because it's all going to keep unfolding to something in the end that will make sense when you get there. But like, don't take life so seriously that you forget to actually enjoy it while it's happening.
I like it. That's important. And so we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, Jayme, for joining me today.
Thank you.